This week on Multiverse News, tons of MCU news. Superman Legacy fills out its cast. The Madam Web trailer has debuted, plus a whole lot more. All that after this. Welcome to Multiverse News, your source for all the information about your favorite fictional universes. My name is Matthew Carroll, and today with me on the panel we have J. Scotty St. Clair from Animation Deliberation. What's going on, J. Scotty?
Doing pretty well, just a little tired because I just got back from the Amazon where I was with your mom when she was studying spiders right before she died.
Thank you for that exposition dump, J. Scotty. And Haley Hobbs from Source Pages. What's up, Haley Hobbs?
I'm just glad I asked Jay what line you were talking about, because otherwise I would have been thoroughly confused right now.
She had no idea. She was like, what is he talking about? I was like, you don't know? You don't know the meme?
Oh, you'll know.
I haven't even seen the meme going around, but I definitely knew what line he was talking about. It's so
congratulations.
Terrible. It's so terrible. And Jay Sisson from Commute the Podcast. What's up, Jay?
Oh, not too much. Just thankful to be here on this Thanksgiving week. Thanksgiving edition of Multiverse News.
Hey, yeah. What are you guys most thankful for in this week's news?
In the news?
Those two out of nowhere. I'm not prepared. I don't have an answer.
We don't want to ruin anything, do we?
I don't know. I don't think, you can't spoil news, right?
Well, I've been accused of it before, so I don't know. Maybe we can.
You can spoil things with news for sure. Okay, well, we'll just dive in, and that can be our some sort of thankful thing on the poll this week. Well, let's get to our first little segment we're going to have, which is, man, there's lots of Marvel stuff. When it comes to sheer number of announcements, updates, and rumors we received this week, despite some stiff competition, Marvel Studios dominated the entertainment news cycle. So let's run down and break down some of the biggest breaking stories impacting the future of our favorite interconnected film, Multiverse. Shang-Chi director Destin Daniel Cretton will no longer be directing Avengers Kang Dynasty. The filmmaker is reportedly stepping away to continue work on other Marvel Studios projects, including a Shang-Chi sequel and the Wonder Man Disney Plus series, which is confirmed to fall under Marvel's new Spotlight banner.
I think we're all happy to hear about a Shang-Chi sequel, because I think everybody wants that. It feels like it's been forever, but it's only been 2 years. Kind of crazy. But this news is not a surprise. Definitely another nail in the coffin of the character of Kang. My friend Faz, who has been on this show before as a guest, told us this week that he heard a rumor that Jonathan Majors' contract stipulated that only he can play Kang, meaning that even his likeness. And so probably another reason why we're not going to get more of that character. It's looking, as we've said before, pretty bleak in the future. And so I'm excited for some other stuff to start dominating the news, and a Shang-Chi #2 sounds great, and the Wonder Man series sounds like something kind of fun and obscure that we need in this world where the MCU is sort of struggling.
Yeah, the Wonder Man series was rumored to be scrapped a few months ago, so it's good to see the update that it is still in production. It does seem like, to me, this signals that there could be a move away from Kang, like you said. I think taking the temperature of the audience, I don't know if anybody would be that mad about it if we just kind of moved on from it. I don't think people are going to riot, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. If the MCU sort of takes a different path and tries to develop a new storyline, maybe towards Secret Wars or something else, and just kind of moves away from the Kang thing entirely. It seems like everything's really on the table at this point. At this current moment, neither of these Avengers films that were announced a year or two ago have a director, which I think is kind of crazy. It just sort of shows the landscape that we're in, that these are two films that were talked about and they were put out there. And they were very surprising at the time. We were already talking about that we felt like Avengers films were far off in the distance. They were something that wouldn't happen in a while. And then all of a sudden Feige comes out on stage. He's like, we're doing two. We're doing Kang Dynasty. We're doing Secret Wars. And it was really shocking at the time. So to see now being in late 2023 and not having a director on either one of these movies, it just kind of shows like there's a lot up in the air for this whole franchise right now.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think, Haley, that it was exciting. It's only been 2 years since Shang-Chi, which is true. But like normally we would get an announcement of a sequel to a movie like Shang-Chi, like almost immediately. Like often before the movie's even out, they're like, oh, we already greenlit the sequel. And like we knew that we'd see Shang-Chi again, but 2 years to hear about the fact that they're making a movie is kind of crazy. It feels like a long time, because I feel like it has been a long time since for them to just be really like solidifying that movie's happening.
I think it's important to remember that everything we're hearing kind of from this point forward is coming from Marvel Studios in a different state. Shang-Chi #1 came out when they were trying to divvy stuff up and have different executives be in charge of these projects. And now that we have Kevin Feige trying to bring maybe a more cohesive feel back to the franchise, it's going to just change. You know, of course, yes, we would have gotten Captain America, then Captain America 2, although that was 3 years apart. And so I think that's something we all have to kind of bear in mind while we're reading all this news. It's going to just start. It's going to get more and more in the coming months, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting story as well, because I think this is like the first instance where Marvel Studios has like parted ways with a director, and they say it's on good terms, and I actually believe them. Like we've heard it in the past, like, you know, Scott Derrickson left Multiverse of Madness due to creative differences. Edgar Wright, and sure, they're amicable in the public and in the press, but you get the sense that they're not going to work together in the future, or if so, not anytime soon. But with Destin Daniel Cretton here, the fact that he's, you know, getting to focus on a Shang-Chi sequel, which is, you know, even though it's only been 3 years, just the focus on that character seems like it's really overdue. And then with the Wonder Man series, that one actually surprises me, because I'm sure it was previously announced, but I actually didn't know that he was involved with that production. So I've got to kind of wonder with the Shang-Chi and Wonder Man through line is, you know, what kind of role is Trevor Slattery going to play? I mean, he's got a factor in that, but the fact that it's falling under the, you know, the Spotlight banner, maybe not, because apparently those are supposed to be less connected to the main universe forthright. So we've been talking more and more about the move away from Kang. The article we talked about a couple of weeks ago saying even before the issues with Jonathan Majors, the reception to Quantumania. So I just, you know, I think this makes a lot of sense that, you know, Kang Dynasty is no longer on the table, but we haven't heard that that's the case for Secret Wars.
Absolutely. Up next, while speaking with Business Insider, director Taika Waititi discussed the possibility of another Thor sequel, suggesting that he wouldn't be involved due to commitments to other future projects. Do we want a Thor 5 with or without Taika's involvement?
I'd be open to the possibility of another Thor movie. I wasn't the biggest fan of Love and Thunder, but I did love Ragnarok. And I really love Taika. I think he's got a really unique and creative vision, and definitely a unique take on comedy. But I have felt lately with him, it's been a little bit of a case of like diminishing returns. And I feel like as he's been given more and more of like a loose leash, it hasn't worked as well for me. So I think the fact that he's moving on to focus on other things is a good thing. And the interesting thing is, of these like future projects he's committed to, his Star Wars project is apparently still on the table. And I thought, you know, we were talking last week about how many of these Star Wars projects have been, you know, canceled, and I thought his fell victim to that as well. But apparently, it's still in development. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I would wonder if Chris Hemsworth would want to do another Thor without Taika Waititi. I think there's a conversation to be had there. The two are really, really close, and they've worked together for several movies now and share, I think, a common vision in a lot of ways. So there is like the way that this was reported out in the media, it was a lot of like, it was framed as though Taika Waititi was sort of saying, yeah, they're going to do it without me. Like I'm out, you know, I'm outside looking in and stuff like that. And that really was not what he said at all. He was very open about the fact that he had about 6 or 7 years of projects lined up, and he was just forthcoming and saying, look, if they want to do a Thor 5, it's probably within the next 6 or 7 years. They're probably not going to wait that long to do a Thor 5. So if they want to do it, they're going to have to call somebody else. But he made sure to say, like, I would totally welcome somebody else doing it that does not step on my toes. Like, I've got a great relationship with Marvel. So I could definitely see him eventually coming back and doing something, but at the moment, coming off of Love and Thunder, which I was not crazy about, I am really surprised that that movie made it past Kevin Feige with the way that it was cut up. This must have been when he was like very much not being super involved with the projects, because you could just tell that movie was shot a certain way at a certain like number of hours, and then was just like Frankensteined down into something that did not connect together very well. I felt like it was a very messy movie, and so I think coming off of that, I'm definitely more open to having somebody else come in and direct Thor. But at the same time, like I think it begs to reason that it might not even be on the table. I mean, you got to get other people on board, namely Chris Hemsworth, and I don't think that's a lock for him necessarily coming back and doing a movie of that size again. He's mentioned within the past year that he has wanted to step away from acting for a time. He's wanted to step back. He's wanted to sort of not do as many of these big time roles. So yeah, I think it's Thor 5. I don't think is as locked in as we think, and then Taika Waititi being out, I don't think is as locked in as we think. I think it's probably just kind of a conversation at this point.
Well, and with the state of Asgard, you could kind of continue telling Asgardian stories without Thor for a time, because he's out in the universe doing other things. But I do think that following up with the story of him and Love, that this, as much as Thor Love and Thunder was cobbled together, as you say, Jay, like just sort of like Frankenstein together, I agree with that. I think the movie was, they removed a lot of stuff, and it's just really, really obvious. But as Marvel is so good at doing, they can give me like a subpar product, but they still just really make me want to see the next chapter. You know, they're really good at leaving the movies in a way that's like, every once in a while, one will be like, well, I see the big problems of this movie, but I am no less excited to see where this story goes. You know, I'm always excited for the next thing. And I think they did a good job with those last shots of Love and Thunder. So I hope they get to continue it before too long, because if it takes them 5 years to get back to that story, it'll be a disservice to that character. Like the character of Love will just not be a kid anymore, you know, like if they continue using the same actress.
And that's kind of what I meant. Like, I didn't mean, I guess it maybe came off like Chris Hemsworth probably wouldn't do Thor 5. That's not really what I meant. I meant more like, if he's going to do a Thor 5, it's probably going to be a while. Like I believe, isn't his daughter the one that plays Love? Isn't that right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, there's obviously would be a vested interest there, I think, in him like teaming up in a movie with his own daughter. Like that's got to be something that would be of interest to him at some point. But you know, I mean, we've got what planned out for the MCU at this point. We've got up through 2025 at this point, like, and no mention of Thor yet. So that's a long way away if it's happening.
Well, but a couple of the years, they only have like one or two things on the slate. So there's still room to slot something like a Thor 5 or a Shang-Chi 2 in there somewhere. So I think we'll find out more's coming.
The cool thing about Thor as a character is we see a lot of different iterations of him throughout the comics, and if it takes a while to get there, we have potential for that character to be old King Thor and be a completely different looking Thor than we've had in the MCU. And so the story potential could go on for decades with Thor. I think that Taika made his mark on the franchise, and I think that's great. I enjoyed both of his films, but I think it's okay if he moves on and if the franchise moves on without him.
Absolutely. Fantastic Four has been no stranger to casting rumors of varying credibility, but according to Deadline sources, Pedro Pascal has emerged as the frontrunner to play Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards. While the deal is not yet inked, discussions are reportedly going well. We love Pedro here, but is he the right man for the job?
Well, if this deal does become official, I have to say that it is great for my brand here on Multiverse News as the resident Pedro Pascal news hound. This is I really like this casting. I think the initial feeling when this broke was shock, because I think a lot of people just didn't expect that he was in consideration for this role, or that the people hadn't really fan casted him or anything like that in the first place. So I think initially people were sort of like, oh, Pedro Pascal. But then I think more and more people, it seems like, warmed up to the idea. And to me, I've seen a lot of mostly positive things about the casting. I think he has a great amount of range. I know if you've only seen him in a couple things, you might think like, well, he's in The Mandalorian. He doesn't really have to do a lot of acting in The Mandalorian, and he's in The Last of Us, and in The Last of Us, he kind of plays this like tough guy, hardened character that doesn't really get to show a lot of emotion or whatever. So he's got this tight range. And that's just really not the case. Like, he's got a wide body of work. He can play super serious. He can play a villain. He can play very like zany characters. And I think his body of work speaks for itself. At this point, it seems like there have been multiple offers to multiple people for this role before it got to Pedro Pascal. We've mentioned Adam Driver all the way back through the summer. That was always on the table. From what I understand, Marvel constantly came back to him with more and more money to try to get him to board this franchise, but it just never got there. The Matt Smith rumors were legit too, and there was even rumors going around which were confirmed that Jake Gyllenhaal was offered the role, which is kind of wild to think about. So eventually they got down that list. Now these are people who maybe aren't interested in these Marvel roles. Like, Marvel roles they're not really roles at this point that like A-list talent, someone like Jake Gyllenhaal or Adam Driver, is going to take. You know, like a lot of these roles, they launch you into A-list talent. So think about someone like Chris Hemsworth before he was Thor, or like Iman Vellani, or like, you know, more recently, or like Brie Larson, or like, you know, just all these people who, and like Tom Hiddleston's a great example, or like Elizabeth Olsen, like these people who took these roles and they were solid and they had a solid body of work, but being in these Marvel movies really catapulted them into the public eye. You know, Pedro, like, he is doing that right now. Like, The Mandalorian's done that for him. Like, you know, so The Last of Us has done that for him, but he's still in that phase of kind of becoming this very public figure. So I think it's great casting. I'm excited for it. I just want us to get an official casting out of the way for this, so we can just you know, if I have to go through like one more, like, well, it's this guy or whatever, that's frustrating. So I'm just hoping this is it. Like, let's get a move on with this thing already.
Me too. You mentioned those two things of Pedro's that are kind of well known, but like, and these are really well known too. But I think too, they're so drastically juxtaposed to his Last of Us and Mandalorian is like Game of Thrones as Oberon. Like, he was like just a completely light, fun, quippy
Lothario.
Yeah, so good on that, and he's so charismatic. Like, I just wanted to root for him, and you know, no spoilers. But and then completely different is The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which is just like him being utterly ridiculous. And I just think both those are like show his range in such a huge way. I just think he's great, and I am fully on board with this casting.
Yeah, definitely on board with Pedro. It was shocking, though, and I think that's the best way to describe it, because I don't think he was the one on anyone's radar, like you said, Jay. But it grew on me really quickly, and I love Pedro, and like we're saying, he does have tons of range, and I'd like to see him be vindicated in a superhero movie that's not Wonder Woman 1984, because that movie was terrible, and I thought his role was kind of terrible. He wasn't bad, but I thought the role they gave him was not good, and probably he did the best he could with it. Screaming his child's name throughout the whole movie got a little tiresome, but I think he's got all the talent in the world to stretch into this role.
Ooh,
I stole
Would
your
you say it's
thunder,
the
Jay.
unbearable weight of massive talent?
He is massively talented.
If this casting ends up panning out, I'll be pretty happy. But I'll be honest, like, it doesn't really like move the needle all that much for me. It kind of feels like safe casting. Like, don't get me wrong, he's a fine actor, super talented. I have no doubt in my mind that he'll do a fine job in the role. And, you know, to his credit, I think with all the news that we've heard about this Fantastic Four, the narrative focus being a little bit more on Sue, I think Pedro is a very generous actor. Like, we've seen him act opposite like Bella Ramsey in The Last of Us. And I even think about when he was cast in The Last of Us, you know, having played The Last of Us Part 1, when I first heard he was cast, I didn't really see it. Like, I was open to the idea, but I didn't really see it. And sure enough, he blew me out of the water. It was perfect casting. So, you know, I have no doubt, like I said, if this pans out, it'll be great. But I can't help but think about some of the other names that have been bandied about, like Adam Driver. I know that was controversial, but that did a little bit more to move the needle for me, you know, for whatever reason. And maybe some people will bounce back and say that's safe casting too. But I don't know. I like it more than Matt Smith, but a little bit less than Adam Driver. So we'll see if it pans out.
I immediately have this idea of like a great scene between Pedro and Iman Vellani, and her walking in and being like, like having the same reaction to his powers that she had to the Flurkin in the Marvels. And being like, those powers look terrifying! Because those are her powers from the comics that they avoided giving her.
Yeah, that would actually be really great. That's good. That's good.
I do wonder like how much hanging of the franchise is needed on Pedro Pascal going forward, especially if Marvel is moving away from the Kang stuff like we've been talking about. You would think that Reed Richards will play a major role anyway going forward, but without Kang in there, I mean, that kind of makes him the focal point. I feel like that kind of makes him the next Jonathan Majors. Like he kind of has to be the glue in a way to pull this universe into Secret Wars. And I mean, Haley, you could speak a lot more to that, like from a comic standpoint, but there's like connections everywhere between Reed Richards to Kang, to Doctor Doom, to Secret Wars, to all that stuff. So I think like it makes a little bit more sense from that standpoint too. Like we need a guy that we can kind of count on for a little while here to pull us into all of these next phases. It's going to have to be involved in a lot of different ways and wear a lot of different hats.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was going to say is you're calling it a safe casting, Scotty, but I don't think of it being safe in a bad way. I think that this is the person who's going to be an anchor in the first family of Marvel, which is a huge deal to so many people out there. And so it's not a casting I'm sure that they took lightly at all. And since we are pivoting away from Kang, it's really clear that we're going to do that. Doctor Doom is the big bad of Secret Wars. I think they went for somebody who can really keep us grounded, really keep everybody on board, and really be somebody who reaches out to the audience. That pun was not intended this time. But who people connect with. I think people really connect with Pedro Pascal and his roles in different ways. He's kind of a chameleon in that way. And I think that's probably why this is such a good casting.
Camille DeLorean.
Well, we spent a lot of time on this one, but I just have to kind of mention, and it didn't make it into the news docket because there was nothing, credible or verifiable enough. But at the mention of Doom, thinking about Pedro, I kind of see him a little bit more as Doom than I think of him like better for Doom than I do for Reed Richards. But I could see him playing really well against Doom and, having the dramatic chops there. But Ryan Gosling is the name that I've heard that's apparently who they really want for Doom. And I absolutely love that. I don't know if there's a grain of truth to that or not, but if that pans out, I'd be very, very happy.
So they're like, internet daddies, let's go. You're going to be in the MCU now.
Internet daddies, assemble.
Yep. Come here.
We got to go to Latveria for my Mojo Dojo Casa house.
We should mention how funny it is that they did cast Pedro Pascal in another daddy role. Like, he is the Mandalorian taking care of Grogu. Then they make him Joel taking care of Ellie in The Last of Us. And now he's literally like the dad of Marvel now.
Yes.
Right. Daddy with a capital D.
He just can't, so funny. He can't get away from it.
It was so unexpected to hear this idea of this casting to me, and I immediately clung to it, and I love it. It's better to me than any of the other castings I've heard. Like, I don't know why. I do. It's not that it was expected. It is safe. I agree. It is, but it was just completely unexpected to me, and it does feel like a different kind of Reed Richards. Less stern, a little more like charismatic, which I think the character, like whoever is going to shepherd the next phase of Marvel, we got to get some charisma in the house. Like, Robert Downey Jr. did such a good job of being that like charismatic middle of the center of the universe, and like we need that. And I think Pedro could pull that off in a way that a lot of the current people, as much as I love them, that's not their role. And Reed Richards being like a charismatic guy that you really like, but you're scared of him, just like Tony. Like, you love him, he's charismatic, he's wonderful, but like he creates Ultron and he does the bad thing. And like Reed's kind of that same kind of guy. And I love this. I'm really more pumped about this casting than anything else we've talked about in the 30 casting choices we've talked about since we started this podcast. Up next, also, suspected villain Galactus received more attention this week as insider rumors named Javier Bardem as the choice to voice the Planet Eater.
Right, you talk about moving the needle. Like, this is one that really moves the needle for me. I know we talked, I think it was, a few weeks, maybe a month ago, we talked about Antonio Banderas being up for the role potentially, and that didn't really do it for me. But Javier Bardem, now that is a voice that is guttural, has some resonance. Like, I think about his role in No Country for Old Men as Anton Chigurh, just flip this cord and make it short.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's so good.
Yeah.
I loved this news. I was even more excited about this news. He is such a good baddie. He has such presence. He's intimidating just as he is. So imagine him being however tall Galactus is supposed to be because he eats freaking planets. Like, ugh, I love this so much.
Well, guys, we have a lot more to talk about. We got some Sony Marvel coming up, some Star Wars, possibly they found their Kevin Feige, maybe? All that right after this quick break. We'll get into that news.
Where are you, Feige? Why can't I find you?
Welcome back to Multiverse News, and we'll dive right in. First, we have Sony Marvel, that little offshoot of the MCU, which is now weirdly connected through all kinds of multiversal shenanigans, dropped the trailer for Madam Web, giving us our first glimpse at the latest Spider-Man spinoff not featuring Spidey. The trailer showcased leads Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney, teasing a slasher-esque narrative as they are stalked by a mysterious villain, Ezekiel Sims. Of course, all those details are overshadowed by the absolute heyday the internet is having with a certain line of dialogue about studying spiders. Memes aside, did the trailer manage to entangle us in this Madam's Web?
Okay, so
Buckle up.
yeah, so this trailer, I'll say something positive first, which is I thought some of the action in the trailer looked kind of cool. I thought I did like the overall arching narrative of being able to predict the future, being stalked by a villain, trying to figure out how to fight the villain that's actively stalking you and you don't know why. Like, I get all that. That all makes sense. That's intriguing. But there were some things in this trailer that did not land quite like I think Sony meant them to. The line that you mentioned that's being memed to hell, it is not being memed in a lovable way, which some movies, they get the positive meme treatment. They get the meme boost. This is completely making fun of the line, and it's a ridiculous line to put in a trailer. Like, to just sneak in there and be like, well, yeah, my mom, whenever she died studying spiders in the rainforest. It's like, why did you give us that much information just now with that line? Like, it's too much. It's like they purposely were like, wait, we got to say something about spiders. We have to, or whatever.
We got to include her mom and the rainforest. Like, none of that is necessary for this trailer.
Spiders. She died.
This is what people want in their Spider-Man movies.
So you got that, man. Dakota Johnson just did not deliver in this trailer. She came off like she just did not want to be there. A lot of her line delivery just seemed like she was in a hostage video. Like, she just was not interested in being there. Same with Sydney Sweeney. Like, I think Sydney Sweeney's a great actress when she wants to be. Like, some of the roles that she's been in Euphoria, she's had some scenes that she has showed off some incredible acting talent.
You went with acting talent. Good.
She is great in that, but like, she does not look like she's having fun in this role. Like, she's bored. Everybody's bored, and it came across like so. Overall, I'm not interested in seeing this in the theater. Like, I'm just not. I think it looked fine. I think it looked like a movie I would stream, but it just is not moving the needle for me to just feel like I have to go see this. And I know what they're gonna do. So we're gonna get closer, and they're gonna be like, oh, you better come for the post-credit scene. The post-credit scene's crazy. They're gonna try to make me go to see the post-credit scene, and I will not go see a movie for the post-credit scene. Like, I hate it when people try to market a movie that way and be like, oh, you have to go see it because the post-credit scene's crazy. Like, absolutely not. Like, I'm going to see a movie, and I know that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna be like, oh, Spider-Man gonna be there? Oh, maybe. Like, maybe you need to go see it. And no, I will not. So, I don't know. I think this thing's gonna get killed. Like, I think the reviews are gonna kill it. Yeah. I think we'll see what happens. We've only seen a glimpse of it, but it's all over the place. It's and that's not good for a launch trailer. You want people to be positive buzz. It's been a lot of negative buzz.
Yeah, I have great hope for the Sonyverse right now. Like, I think the last few things they've done have sort of brought me around. Like, well, okay, they're building something. This trailer looks like trash. And we talked extensively. We talked extensively about it on the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast this week. So go check that out. Me and Jeff like got really deep into this trailer and talked a lot about it. But the thing that you brought up to me that I hadn't really thought about is like, I love time travel, but it is tricky. Time travel is a tricky mechanic to do well. You have to do it cleverly because basically every time travel story is, can you change the future? Like that's like the core of every time travel story. And once you answer that question, it's the story stops being interesting. So it's like this weird, like you have to balance answering that question and like what does time travel mean, and like the way it works has to matter and all that stuff, and like seeing the future as her power is something, while I am excited about Sony's future, I don't trust them at all to tell a convincing time travel story or like time future, how does the future work, Final Destination type thing. Like it seems fraught, we'll say. This entire movie seems fraught.
I got nothing.
Okay.
You guys have said it all.
I'll get a few negatives out of the way because I feel like we've been pretty negative on this one for good reason. But to your point, Jay, I feel like the acting across the board is pretty bad. But Dakota Johnson in particular is pretty wooden for me, and I haven't seen her in too many other things, to be fair. But I did see her in Peanut Butter Falcon, and she was decent in that one. So seeing this trailer, I have a theory, and I do not think that this theory is going to happen, but if it does, it'll actually make me like this movie more potentially. So we have this villain that's presented to us in Ezekiel Sims, and we talk about the potential of like a Spider-Man showing up in this film, be it in a post-credit scene or what have you. But my thought was, like, Matt, you talking about being excited about what the Sonyverse is doing. My hope is that they kind of like want to be more connected to Across the Spider-Verse. And I'm hoping this guy that is Ezekiel Sims is actually Miguel O'Hara, because that's what I first thought when I saw him. And how cool would it be if it was actually Miguel O'Hara going around to these other multiverses under the guise of Ezekiel Sims, like, and he's actually our big bad of the Spider-Verse.
That could be really interesting. Yeah, I don't know if that's what they're going for, but I do like the weirdness of that. If they suddenly that's the Sony's most popular Spider-Man property right now, and if they suddenly made all of these movies matter to Into the Spider-Verse 3 or whatever, like that would be a way to rope all of this in and be like, oh crap, like animated Miles Morales showed up in the last frame and won the battle. Oh
wow, I wasn't gonna go that far with it, but hey.
I'm getting so angry while this.
Yeah, I hate this a lot.
They're like, oh gosh, let's throw Miles in there.
Don't do it.
don't ruin my boy like that.
I don't think it's going to happen, but
yeah.
My theory that I threw out on the MCU cast was that one of the last things that should happen in this movie is Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man either being in this universe or being brought in by Madam Web from another universe, and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man being sort of the central figure for this sort of live action Spider-Verse that this seems to be alluding to. And he would be a character that we all want to see more from after No Way Home. And I think that could be an actual, that would be a post-credits that would make me go, let's face it, I'm going to go. I'm excited about the Sony stuff. I am.
I still haven't seen Morbius.
That's okay.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I feel just fine.
You
about that.
really haven't missed the whole lot.
I liked it. Okay, with the SAG-AFTRA strike nearly in our rearview mirrors, James Gunn has wasted no time building out the foundation of his DCU with a few notable additions joining the roster of Superman Legacy. Nicholas Hoult is stepping into the Oxford shoes of Superman's greatest enemy, Lex Luthor, while his secretary and mistress, Eve Tessmacher, will be played by model and actress Sarah Sampaio. Soup's best pal, Jimmy Olsen, will be played by the Righteous Gemstones' Skylar Gisondo. And finally, Maria Gabriela de Faria joined the cast as the antagonist, the Engineer, with a liquid nanite body from which she creates solid objects. She is also a member of the team The Authority, so presumably she would carry over into that announced film as well. Does our excitement grow alongside the expanding cast of the fledgling DCU?
Yeah, I know we've talked a lot about our expectations and anticipation for the DCU as James Gunn has had more and more comments, but I feel like with these round of announcements, my excitement is is kind of at an all-time high here, and it really feels more and more like the Superman legacy film that we're getting is really James Gunn like taking a page out of the book of like the animated properties, the comic books themselves, where we're just, getting dropped right into this world where superheroes exist and they have existed. And, it was kind of the challenge that DC had from the get-go. Like they were always playing catch up to Marvel, and it's like, how do we do this? And, they tried to build out their Justice League with individual characters, and they tried to fast track that, to obviously not great results. So, I still, have some good confidence in James Gunn. I'm not really familiar with a couple of these cast members, but Nicholas Hoult, I think he is a great selection for Lex Luthor. I think he's got a lot of gravitas, and he's able to portray a lot of menace as well as have some, comedic chops, because with this being a James Gunn film, I have no doubt that even the villains are going to be, delivering a few laughs here and there. And then Skylar Gisondo, he kind of stands out to me as well because he's a dead ringer for Jimmy Olsen. But with him having appeared primarily in like comedies, like The Righteous Gemstones that was mentioned, they've actually talked a lot about the potential for Jody Hill to be directing some things for DC. So with, and I actually think he directed 1 or 2 episodes of Peacemaker. So that would make a lot of sense. And that's, I think it was Booster Gold that they were talking about him for potentially, which I think sounds great. And, just the synergy that seems to exist between James Gunn and some of these people he's worked with in the past, I think that stands to reason. So, I'm excited for all of these. I don't know anything about The Authority, but I'm excited to, see them brought to the big screen so I can learn more about them.
I do wonder with this movie, as the cast gets bigger and bigger, I think this will inevitably be a very comic book film. That's what he seems to be going for. And I think that's where James Gunn really shines, is when he's able to just kind of grab any character that he wants and use them in a way that he envisions, no matter how deep cut the character is. Like, that's what he's really good at. But I do wonder, as the cast gets bigger, like how much this movie will appeal to the general public, which does matter, right? Like comic book fans or DC fans, they're, I think, going to be happy with a movie that is very comic booky and is like very like lots of characters and everything like that. I think they're going to be pleased with that. And I think the movie will be good. But you got to wonder too, like how much can we draw in an audience, right? Like you think about people who are not really super in touch with all this DCU stuff behind the scenes. Like they just kind of know when movies are coming out and then they make a decision on a weekend if they want to go see it or not. I wonder how many of those people are in on this when that movie finally hits. And I think that's an important conversation because that's going to matter as you move into the future. Because when you're looking at this, like, I had to write them down because I was trying to think about like how many characters have been announced for this movie so far.
Sure.
So I had to go back. I had to write them down. So you got Superman, Lois, Guy Gardner from the Green Lanterns, Hawkgirl, Metamorpho, Mr. Terrific, and now the Engineer, Lex Luthor, Jimmy Olsen, and then Eve. So all of these characters, all of these relationships, that's a lot of wires to cross in a movie. I think at this point, James Gunn has earned the benefit of the doubt that we can just kind of trust that he has got a plan here in a way to effectively use all these characters. But that definitely makes me just a little intrigued on how the public is going to come into this movie, right? Like, are they going to be interested in it if they haven't really been interested in these types of movies? Is this going to draw them to the theater?
I want to address that real quickly. And like, Jay, I think you're totally right. Obviously, these movies have to have like some mass appeal to the general audience, but as there is the potential as they expand this universe, they may polarize some of the more casual audience members. But it kind of made me think immediately, like, how big an impact do you think repeat viewings and like the same opening weekend from like absolute diehards makes a difference? Because like I think that has been the thing that like has been missing from a lot of releases like lately in the internet zeitgeist and the conversation around it. And I know even myself, like I typically make plans to see most MCU releases at least twice opening weekend, but that hasn't been, a guaranteed thing the last few ones.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely been something that hasn't impacted the box office really at all in recent years. There have not been a lot of like passion for repeat viewings. But back in the day, especially when you're talking about big event films, that definitely impacts the box office, especially for fandoms. And I think the DC fandom is at a weird place right now, right? I mean,
Sure, that's fair.
you're ending this Snyderverse thing. It was kind of messy. It was always kind of all over the place. There's probably been a little bit of a lack of trust between the fans and Warner Brothers up to this point. And I think a lot of those fans are ready for something new. It's just you have to convince them to buy in on what you're doing, right? And that's something that's going to have to take place between now and July of 2025.
I think when you ask a lot of people who their favorite superhero is, it's Superman. And it's because of the longevity of the character. People who may not see all of the movies and these franchises will go see a Superman movie because simply that it's Superman. And though James Gunn's Guardians movies aren't my favorite things in the MCU, he's shown that if he has some strong leads, so David Corenswet, Rachel Brosnahan, and Nicholas Hoult, they're going to be the core of the movie. And he can surround them with these auxiliary characters and then maybe do something else with them. But if his leads are strong, he can make a good story. And so I think that's probably what the crux of this will end up being. It does seem overwhelming when Jay was reading all those names. I was like, oh God, I didn't even remember that. But probably it's going to be a jumping off point for some of those characters while we keep the trio strong.
Sure.
It's really interesting to think about. James Gunn has been sort of like one of the strongest things about Marvel. They started with this sort of B list of characters that haven't been played that much in media, and then they made them huge. Thor, Hulk, Captain America, Iron Man. Then they turned to James Gunn to go with the even more obscure characters, and then DC did the same thing with that second Suicide Squad movie. They don't know what letters came out of my mouth the first time. And like, he's so good at taking characters and making them as weird as possible. And that's some of the most charming stuff, is just James Gunn characters are always very strange and weird. But what happens when you hand that guy the keys to Superman? Like, what is gonna, like, I just don't know if it's gonna be out of his, the two things that worry me are him helming Superman and having all the access in the world, because he gets relegated to the Guardians and they only give him access to characters they want to give him, and then of course he earned credit over there over time. And same thing with all the DC stuff, Peacemaker, Suicide Squad, he only has access to like the B or C or D level tier characters.
I agree with what you're saying, but you can't diminish the fact that like they hedged a lot of bets around him in terms of like the role the Power Stone played, the Collector, Thanos popped up in that first Guardians. Like they were really, betting on the cosmic side of the Infinity Saga with that first film. Absolutely.
They're definitely like, but all of that is sort of like, kind of like Jay was saying, like, you don't go to a movie for the post credits sort of thing. Like it feels like those were all like that sort of thing. Like,
that's fair.
If you don't like Guardians, or if you don't care about the Talking Tree movie, you should still go because it has Thanos in it. You know what I mean? Like that's that sort of thing. Like, But now it's like the basis of his movie is going to be the biggest character in DC. But one big strength of this movie, I think, is one of the biggest flaws of the DC EU, and that is that like they didn't make a Superman movie. Like they made one Superman movie, and so seeing Superman as like the title of a movie, Superman Legacy, is going to be like, it's kind of like we joke about how Spider-Man movies come every 2 years, no matter who the actor is. It's like they just keep making them, but we haven't seen a real Superman movie since Man of Steel. So it's been a while for Superman fans, and I think it is going to be an exciting thing. So it's smart to start with this character. I just wonder if he's going to either be out of his comfort zone because his characters aren't weird enough, or if he's going to take these characters that are very established and do something weird with them. Like I don't know what he's going to, like he's so used to being in the realm of weird. I wonder what these are going to be like. I'm really interested.
I think the DC Comics universe does speak more to his skill set because it's like Scotty said, heroes walk among us. Heroes and villains are just part of the daily life. Whereas that was the case in the MCU, but it was more like, it's not the gods and monsters of DC. It's more like real people. That's the difference between the two franchises, is the whole thing. And so I don't think it's outside his comfort zone to go into a world where gods and monsters are real to people and because that's what made the Guardians movies so different and special. He could play in this world where anything was possible because you're in space and you're, in a big floating head called Nowhere. And I think it does suit him. I just think it is a big leap to take for sure.
Yeah. All right. During an interview with Vanity Fair, Ahsoka and Clone Wars showrunner Dave Filoni dished up some new details about the future of Star Wars, including his own promotion as Chief Creative Officer of Lucasfilm. He suggested that his new role would see not only his increased involvement in every part of the franchise, but also include him far earlier in the development process than previously. Filoni will reportedly continue to helm his film, which will follow the events of Ahsoka, Mandalorian, and the Book of Boba Fett, as well as a second season of Ahsoka. Is Filoni truly Star Wars fans' chosen one, meant to bring balance to the franchise?
Before I respond, I'm giving a Twitch shout out to Jess and Nevaeh. Nevaeh, your aunt does know the people on the TV screen. Just FYI. We've met her. Okay, yes, Dave Filoni has been the chosen one. I feel like it was just last week I was saying this, like, Dave Filoni's the shiz in Star Wars, and now they've made it official. They've given him the big CEO, C-level title, the C-suite stuff, and this is a smart move on Star Wars. We were just saying their stuff has been a little kind of here, there, and everywhere, but Dave has shown that he's got the leadership skills, he's got the storytelling skills to push Star Wars in this right direction. He knows how to make the stories matter, even if they're taking place between the big tentpole films. And some people feel like that's no stakes, and that's probably true, but those stories still matter to people who are like super deep into Star Wars lore, and that's what he does. That's him to a T. And so I felt so proud of him, which is so dumb because he doesn't know who I am. But I was like, finally, we're getting all the recognition for Dave Filoni that he deserves. And he's really the one that's going to keep it all together, keep it moving forward, and keep it cohesive, which is what we truly, truly need in Star Wars.
Had Ahsoka not landed as well with me as it had, I probably would not have been as excited about this news. But that being the case, I'm right there with you, Haley. I do believe, Dave Filoni is the chosen one at this point. I haven't loved everything that he's done with the Star Wars lore, but he's shown his passion, he's shown his commitment, he's built up these characters and seen them, make their way into the limelight. So I admire him for that reason. And always there are two. There's a master and there's an apprentice, and he very much was the apprentice to George Lucas's master, handpicked. So the fact that he is finally, elevated to the role of master. He still reports to Kathleen Kennedy, supposedly, but I have to imagine like she just basically, says, keep doing what you're doing. And so I think this is good for everybody. It's well-deserved for Dave Filoni, and I think it's great for the Star Wars franchise.
Yeah, I think it is important to remember going forward, and this is not a knock. I love Dave Filoni, but I think one thing that they're going to have to reality check themselves about going forward as they continue to build this thing out is that there aren't like people who go to movies to see Star Wars movies and then people who are like Dave Filoni lore fans. These are two different groups of people, and one is a lot bigger than the other. And so you have to kind of keep that in mind going forward, I think, if you're Dave Filoni. Ahsoka landed really well. I enjoyed it. But it's just a fact that it did not do very well in terms of streaming numbers. It was not very high up on the Nielsen charts. It was not streamed as much as maybe as it should have been. But I think a lot of that is because of the perceived barrier to entry of it. It was pitched as this is Rebels season 6. This is connected to all of these animated characters. 5, sorry, Haley. It's connected to all of these animated characters that you may or may not know, and the show made no attempt to hold your hand on who these characters were, which I think is fine. But I think that did cause a lot of people to feel like it wasn't super accessible. And so I think the danger is that if you're looking at that from a franchise standpoint, like we're going to continue this out, but we're going to keep connecting it back to this stuff that at this point, are most average casual viewers who want to go see a Star Wars movie, are they going to go back and watch 7 seasons of Clone Wars? Probably not, right? At this point. So I think there is a conversation that needs to happen there in terms of like, the Filoni verse is good and it's well written and it shows off his creative talent, but is it really going to draw people out to the theater to see a Star Wars movie that's incredibly connected to the Filoni verse and doesn't make an attempt to like get you up to speed if you go see it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think there does have to kind of be a connection, a conversation there. I think Filoni has proven that he has definitely the creative ability to craft a story, to weave together a story, to build characters like that. I'm in no way concerned about his ability to do that. I am a little bit concerned that we haven't had a Star Wars movie since The Rise of Skywalker, so you're kind of leading up to the next time we're going to go to the theater and see a Star Wars movie. And that's going to be a big moment. And the Force Awakens worked because it was pitched as, these are new characters, this is a new thing. If you've seen the old stuff, it helps, but you don't have to see the old stuff. And so that movie went out and cleared $1 billion, no problem. Right, and that whole trilogy went out and just kept churning out these movies that people went and saw. Will a Filoni pitched Clone Wars / Rebels / Ahsoka continuation movie do that? You know what I mean? So it's like that's kind of the thing that I'm kind of watching as we go forward here with this. But overall, like, I think it was a move that they had to make. Like, you got to have this guy in house. If you're making Star Wars projects, he's got to be there. He's got to be in the room.
I think all that really matters, whether you can bring home the box office numbers and stuff back to Star Wars, not back to Star Wars. I'm sure those movies did well, but there've been diminishing returns critically, and so that could lead to diminishing box office returns. And it's like, I think all you got to do is promote it right. I think part of the reason that Ahsoka is one that didn't do as well is just because people don't know who Ahsoka is. But if you put, let's say, Luke Skywalker in a Dave Filoni led movie, and then these other characters are kind of side characters or whatever, and like they're telling a story of like, post Vader, and it's like finally find out what happened after Vader threw the Emperor down the shaft, like whatever, like you finally finding all that out. Spoiler alert.
Ancient cloning technology or something like that.
Spoiler alert for a
Somehow.
50-year-old movie.
Somehow Palpatine returned. But the whole thing is just like how you pitch that movie. If you pitch it as it's the continuation of 16 Star Wars movies, then like, yeah, or 16 Star Wars properties in animation, and then I don't think anyone will see it. If you pitch it as here's the next chapter in the original trilogy that you never got, and it just happens to include characters that are also, and then you do a good job of introducing those characters to fresh audiences, I think it could thrive. And then you just inspire people to go to Disney Plus and follow up with those characters they enjoyed and find out about their past and stuff like that. Star Wars has always been told out of order. It's okay to watch it out of, you know what I mean?
Well, and The Mandalorian doesn't have this problem that Ahsoka had, because The Mandalorian was pitched as, this is a guy and here's when he is on the timeline, and he's not connected to anyone else, and any connections that happen just happen, and they're not really like, there's not a barrier to entry, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Or at least a perceived barrier to entry. But Ahsoka was not pitched that way. Ahsoka was pitched as literally Rebels season 5. Like, you have to have some background knowledge for this to connect. And I know she showed up in The Mandalorian and everything like that, but still there was this like perceived, like, you either know this person or you don't, and if you've just seen the movies, you don't know who she is. So I think a lot of people see that and they think like, well, that's not for me, and they don't watch it. Which, like, I felt like ultimately the show, it worked, even if you hadn't seen that stuff. Like, if you hadn't seen Rebels or Clone Wars, like, I think it still worked. But I think people just, they weren't willing to hit play at the beginning. Right. And so there's kind of like, there's a bridge that has to be, there's a gap there that has to be bridged for you to connect with your audience again, in a way, to try to draw people back into this thing that's been going on in the background, whether or not they've been following.
I think Ahsoka's getting kind of an unfair treatment. It came out during the strike, so it couldn't be celebrated probably the way it would have been by the stars of the show, and it couldn't be promoted by Rosario Dawson, I'm sure, the way that she wanted to. And so I don't think it's necessarily a good litmus test for something like that, because like all of the things during the strike, and since the show has been on, everything's been out of order and disrupted. And so we don't have, I feel like, a good reading on that. And I've heard it both ways. I've heard people who didn't know who she was and they didn't get it. And there were people who didn't know she was and it didn't matter. I think that's part of Star Wars in general. They've always just kind of thrown characters at you. You know, like Boba Fett is a great example. Like, here's a bounty hunter and now he's sucked down into the Sarlacc pit and now he's, 50 years later and he has a show. Like, I don't think that's, I think for hardcore fans, that's not an issue. And I think for casual fans, they'll just go see the movies because they'll go see the movies. Yeah. And hopefully it'll be movies that they can go see. Like, to me, that's not a Dave Filoni issue necessarily. Yeah. Like Matt's saying, that's a marketing thing. And I think give him more as the guiding hand on those projects, because we're talking about, James Mangold's, which is like the Dawn of the Jedi, and then the Rey New Jedi Order. Those are two very disparate timelines. So I don't think it's going to be like, if you don't know what happened in whatever, the High Republic, blah, 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 then you're not going to know what's going on with Rey. Like, I don't think they'll do that. I think it's just more about having that person who does know the connecting points that matter. That whether you, the audience member, know they connect or don't, doesn't matter. Like you're saying with The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, we're going to do a quick break. When we get back, we've got our Spotify poll results from last week and a lightning round that I was upset we couldn't include multiple of these in the main stories. So, who knows where this is going to go? Probably too many rebuttals. Here we go, right after this.
Not by me. I play by the rules.
Welcome back to Multiverse News. We're going to dive right into our Spotify poll results for last week. We asked, which Marvel delay are you most bummed about? And the winner, it sounds surprising to me, the winner was Captain America Brave New World, which is 37.1% of you guys. And Deadpool 3 got second place at 27%. Thunderbolt's right below that, and Blade right below that. What do you guys think about these results?
Deadpool wasn't really delayed in a significant way. I feel like we should throw that one out.
It's a few months, but yeah, not too much.
Not as far.
That's the one that kind of has me scratching my head as well. Like,
you confuse the people.
You're still getting it in a relatively reasonable amount of time. Why is that the one that bums you the most? I'd be way more bummed about one of these ones that hasn't even entered production, like Thunderbolts or Blade, because the possibility of them happening is just that less likely now.
Scotty, we know you just want to see Florence Pugh.
You caught me.
Just be honest about it.
You caught me.
Yeah, I was surprised by that, and I guess I'm thinking about it the same way some of these guys were, because I think Deadpool 3. I guess looking at these and the delays, I'm most bummed, but I just look at it and think of what I'm most excited about, and I think as much as I want to see all of these movies, I think I'm most excited for Deadpool 3. Like, I can't wait to see how they interact with the MCU, and after certain events in certain movies that came out recently, that has me raising my eyebrows even more than I was last week when we recorded. So I'm excited about that. And before we dive into lightning round, let's just say we have a Patreon, patreon.com/multiverse newscast. And you can find us over there and you get ad-free access to the episodes. And biggest thing is you just get to support this show. We are really excited about this show. We want to do more with it. We want to bring you guys even better coverage of all these things. So if you want more out of this show, please go over to patreon.com/multiverse newscast and throw us a subscription on there. Now it's time for the lightning round. So you guys have heard us do the lightning round before, where I'm going to read a story. We're all going to have a chance to claim that story by buzzing in by saying our name, and then once we claim it, you get to speak on that story, and everybody gets one rebuttal throughout the lightning round. So here we go. The Fall Guy, starring Ryan Gosling, is being pushed back from March 1st to May 3rd, the date originally held by Deadpool 3.
Jay, I just think this is a great move for this movie. It's an action movie. It looks like it's going to be a perfect summer movie, and that is the date that kicks off the summer box office. Mm-hmm. So if Deadpool's getting out of there, I really like that move for this movie. I think that really raises your marketing potential a lot, and it allows you to kick off the summer box office.
100%. Actress and playwright Anna Noguera has been tapped to write Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow for the DCU. James Gunn broke the news while confirming that he also is currently looking for a director for the film.
Scotty. Yeah, I'll just say that apparently she was previously attached to the previous version of Supergirl that, still had Sasha Kaye in the role. So the fact that she still gets to participate in this, I think that's always a great thing when, a creative person loses out on a project due to, forces outside of their control. I think it's great that you can bring her back. And I think it speaks to the fact that she clearly has an affinity for this character and has something to bring to the table that James Gunn is clearly excited about. So sounds good to me. Bring it on.
Awesome. Marvel Studios has dropped the first trailer for the second season of the animated series What If? The trailer was accompanied by the season's release schedule, set to debut December 22nd on Disney Plus and dropping a new episode daily for 9 days through December 30th. Matt, what are you doing to me, Marvel? What are you doing? I do a Marvel podcast, as some of you may know, and goodness, this is going to be quite the week. During Christmas, you're going to make me podcast on Christmas Day. I'm just kidding. This is a great present. I want to podcast about this, and we're going to be bringing it. So go follow Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, because we're going to cover these every day. And I'm probably going to beg some of my co-hosts here to come help me bridge all those gaps, because I doubt I can get Ashley and Jeff to do every episode.
Tiny butt response. I'm very excited for the Marvel 1602 episode, which is based on comics written by Neil Gaiman, if you want to check them out.
Oh, I didn't know he wrote that. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good nugget.
Gonna jump in with a quick tiny butt as well and just say I'm excited to see that we're going to get some iteration of Shang-Chi and What If, because on Animation Deliberation, we did an episode where we all got to pitch our idea for a What If episode, and all three of us with no prior knowledge selected Shang-Chi. So to see that he's going to get represented in season 2 is pretty exciting.
It really is. Really is. Bob Iger revealed that Disney is working on a 4th Frozen movie in addition to the previously announced Frozen 3, which hasn't been released yet.
Haley, Bob Iger is this is the cash cow of Disney right now, and he is not wrong. But they haven't even started making Frozen 3, so this is pretty wild, and clearly he thinks that this is going to be the thing that maybe restabilizes part of their fandom, hopefully.
We're building a snowman. I'm not asking. It's happening, whether you're in it or not.
It's now a dictatorship.
He's like, y'all want Frozen 3? How about Frozen 4?
I have a tiny butt. Let it go. Let it go.
Oh, man. People freaking love Frozen.
I know. I've actually never seen any of them, so I can't really say anything about them.
Well, then don't tiny butt.
One quick response from me at the subject of Disney animation. I will say I got to see Wish at a early fan screening a few days ago, and it does have some earworms that, will definitely stick with me. So.
Neat. 20th Century Studios has set a date for The First Omen, a prequel to Richard Donner's horror classic The Omen. The film is set to hit theaters on April 5th, 2024.
Scotty, I'll just say we should have had either Bill Brie or Ashley Coffin on to talk about this one, because I am a horror fan, but I've never seen The Omen.
Same. Lionsgate prequel The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, what a title, debuted with a strong $44 million domestically and a global haul of $98.5 million. Securing the weekend's top spot, but falling slightly short of anticipated figures. Meanwhile, The Marvels experienced a drastic 78% decline in its second weekend, marking Marvel Studios' steepest second-week drop to date and setting a new low for modern superhero franchise films.
Jay,
Scotty, Please, I was just about to say you're going to be hearing a lot from me this lightning round, so please take it away.
Yeah, it was not a great weekend at the box office in general. And I think Haley and I talked about this a little bit earlier this week, but I think like franchise fatigue as a whole is kind of a thing right now. I don't think it's necessarily an indictment on the Hunger Games or the Marvels, or as specifically as it seems, as it is just an indictment on franchises in general. I don't think people are rushing to the theater to see franchises. Doesn't mean people don't like franchises, but they're more interested in streaming franchises a few months later. They're not necessarily feeling like these are event films that they need to go see. I think both of these films will do very, very well when they hit streaming. I bet they shoot right to the top of the Nielsen charts for streaming whenever they finally make it to Disney Plus, and then whatever the Hunger Games would be on. I don't know that deep.
Lionsgate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure who they partner up with, but like if you read the headline, it's like the Hunger Games like took first place with 44 million, like all this type of stuff, and it's almost an identical first weekend to the Marvels. Was about 40-ish million domestically or something like that. The difference is the budget. The Hunger Games cost about $100 million to make. The Marvels cost about $250 million to make. So they're going to be received a little bit differently from a business perspective. But overall, just this is a down weekend in general. But I think both of these movies will probably. They were well received by critics, mostly both of them. But I think like they'll probably do really well when they hit streaming. But the drop off for the Hunger Games is coming next week. If this was the opening, like it's going to have just as steep of a drop off next weekend.
I thought I could resist, but I can't. Scotty with a quick rebuttal here. I actually did see the Hunger Games prequel this weekend, and I gotta say it was solid. It was solidly entertaining. I enjoyed it pretty thoroughly, and Rachel Zegler has been getting a lot of flack here lately, but her performance did stand out to me. I think Tom Blythe as well. He's a guy to keep your eye on for some future lead roles. I really think he brought a lot of nuance to a complicated role, and I actually found myself like comparing it to Star Wars a lot in the Star Wars prequel movies in terms of like seeing the fall from like this once altruistic character to like basically the Hitler of a fictional world. But to address the Marvels a little bit, I do think it's disappointing and a little unfair the treatment at the box office that it's getting. But holidays are just around the corner, so hopefully we get a little bit of a healthy boost come award season.
Absolutely. Warner Brothers and Legendary have moved up Dune Part 2's debut to March 1st, 2 weeks earlier than its most recent date of March 15th.
Yahoo! That is all.
And I believe that's the Fall Guy moving back, which opened up the spot for this to move forward. So that makes a lot of sense. And that all is because of Marvel moving everything back. I think both of these movies are going to benefit from more space between Fall Guy and Dune, and more space for them. Just basically Marvel clearing the way for other action adventure comedy stuff to thrive. During Deadline's Contenders film Los Angeles event, producer Irwin Winkler announced that Creed 4 is currently in development. Michael B. Jordan, the franchise's star and director of Creed 3, is set to helm the upcoming installment. Matt, I'm excited about this. I really love the arc that these movies took from like Sylvester Stallone as the behind the camera like writer. I think he directed one or two of the Rocky movies as well, and then sort of like handing that off in later years, and then coming on and the two of them working together for Creed 1 and 2, and then Sylvester leaving the franchise and Michael B. Jordan taking over the director's chair. It just feels like very, very interesting, like Michael B. Jordan, his first directing role, getting to direct on this franchise that kind of launched Sylvester Stallone's career as a writer. And I think it's just a very cool, like, Ouroboros feeling to it. I don't know. I like it. And I think the series has been great. So I am all in for a fourth one. Somehow they keep making these movies interesting. I always feel like it's not going to be. Like every time I see another Rocky or Creed movie, I'm like, it's a boxing match. It's going to end one of two ways. But like they always do a good job of roping me in to care about the characters. And that's really all that matters. Speaking candidly, during a conversation On artist David Finch's YouTube channel, acclaimed comic book writer Robert Kirkman potentially spoiled Steven Yeun's upcoming MCU role in Thunderbolts.
Haley, oops. I think they probably meant to keep that under wraps. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a bummer because it came after all the Fantastic Four stuff that was coming out. And it's almost like, I'm sure it wasn't done on purpose, but it was kind of like, hey, remember us? Maybe they'll change it.
Or is that Kevin Feige with the sniper rifle meme?
Yeah,
like, that's what comes
drone?
to mind.
I'd really like to be a fly on the wall during the next conversation between Steven Yeun and Robert Kirkman.
Right.
It's like, come on, man, come on. Yeah. He was like so cavalier about it. He's like, I don't work for Marvel. What do I care?
Like he literally, like I went and listened to the quote. He literally just like, I'm never going to work with those guys. I don't care. I'll tell him. Like he knew exactly what he was doing.
That's so nuts. That's just shitty to do to Steven Yeun.
His role was rumored for a while too before Kirkman. I'm not going to say it because I don't want people to get spoiled. But like, if you want to go find it, you can find it. But the role that Yeun was rumored to play has been out there for a while. So it wasn't out.
Still not confirmed.
Never confirmed. But it was it'd been floating for a while. So
right.
He just sort of jumped in and threw in that he thought that was the case, that was true.
Yeah. It's always really interesting when these podcast guys who just kind of talk loosely. I feel like Kevin Smith is one that just like always makes news because he like just a little too loose with his tongue. Like, oh yeah, I heard about that project being on blah, blah, blah. And everybody's like, wait. And sometimes it's like not even right, but he just like kind of sort of half remembers conversations he has and then tells about it. It's kind of funny. Black Mirror will be getting a 7th season on Netflix. No casting has been announced, but production is expected to begin before the end of this year.
Jay, I thought this last season of Black Mirror was hit or miss, which kind of most seasons of Black Mirror are hit or miss. They drop the seasons on you. They always, each episode is a standalone thing with usually really great talent attached. And you just go on a roller coaster ride. Like you watch one episode and it just like moves you like you're crying by the end. Like it's making you feel all of the things. And then you watch the next episode and you're like, that was so stupid. And you just don't really like they're polar opposite episodes almost sometimes. And I would take the top 10 episodes of Black Mirror and I'd put them up against anything ever made. Like in terms of just like the social commentary, the acting, the writing, like it's so good and they knock so many things out of the park. But then there's some episodes that are so forgettable and just don't stick with you at all. So it just kind of, and this last season was like that. Like there were a couple that just really stuck with me. I was like, man, that's so good. And by the end, I felt so satisfied after watching it. And then there were a few that like just totally throw away. So I think like this next season, that's kind of what I'm expecting. But I'm always going to hear out Black Mirror. I'm always going to hear it out because when it hits, and it hits really hard and it sticks with you.
What was that episode that like took the world by storm that was starring Annie from Schitt's Creek?
It's called Joan is Awful. Was the name of that episode? Which that was a great episode. Like that episode was really good. And you can, if you're interested in Black Mirror, my suggestion to you would just be go Google like what are the top 5 episodes of Black Mirror and just watch like a couple of them. And then, because they're standalone, you don't need to. Each one is its own thing. You'll find stuff that really moves you. I think, like some of those top episodes are really good.
Absolutely, but steel yourself because they're also sometimes heartbreaking or devastating or like just terrifying.
Yeah.
Like looks at what the future of technology could do, and
There's one called The Entire History of You. That's one I always recommend to people. And then there's one called Nosedive. It stars Bryce Dallas Howard. That one's a really, really good one. So there's a lot of great ones out there.
What's the name of the one with the fake world? Paradiso or something like that?
Yeah.
Something so. Paradiso. It's really good too. Can't remember the full name. Okay. Sources tell Deadline that Universal Pictures has begun early development on a new installment in the Jason Bourne franchise, and that Edward Berger, fresh off his Oscar-winning film All Quiet on the Western Front, is in negotiations to oversee development and direct the film.
Scotty? I'm not super excited for another Jason Bourne film, but I will check it out. But more than anything, I appreciate the reminder to go back and check out All Quiet on the Western Front because It did win an Oscar, and I love that book. So thank you for the reminder.
I thought
Yeah,
it won. I think it won 4 Oscars actually.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
4.
It's great. Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. I mean, you got to read it's in German, so you got to read the subtitles.
How will I ever get through it?
But yeah, it's great. I'm actually kind of excited for another Bourne movie. Like I really like that trilogy with Matt Damon. I think it's really good. I think it's solid still. It is not confirmed or whatever that Matt Damon will be involved with this. It just kind of the article said they might be able to woo him back or something like that. So, but if he's attached, my interest level definitely goes up.
How you like them apples?
It's kind of wild to think about the return of him to that role. Would, at this point, the time between those things would be almost like what we got when, like, I don't know, some of these older actors return to their roles, like, I don't know, when, like...
Harrison Ford between Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Raiders, Last Crusade, rather.
Absolutely. It is that same sort of time frame, but it feels so weird because I was in college when when Jason Bourne came out, the Bourne Identity came out, and it's been 20 years, and it's been that long. I don't know. It's probably been whatever 14, 15 years since he did one, which is kind of wild. I don't know. I'm making those numbers up. It's been a while. Not looking it up.
The last one was 2016.
For him?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so.
Those 3 were really spread out, like really, really spread out.
Oh.
Well, there was 3, and then there was a 4th one that was just called Jason Bourne.
Right.
And now there's going to be a 5th one.
Oh, wow. I think I fell off then because I must
Bourne
have missed
Identity,
the 4th one.
Bourne
Supremacy,
Bourne Ultimatum, Jason Bourne, and then whatever this one's going to be.
Wasn't there also one where Hawkeye was...
Oh, Bourne Legacy. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. You're right. Yeah.
Remember when they tried to make Jeremy Renner the runner-up to every action franchise and it didn't work out?
I thought once they did Legacy, he didn't come back, but he's already been back again since then.
Now I'm getting confused about which one came out before the other one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I thought... Because that's what I was thinking. Because I think Legacy was the 4th one, if I'm not mistaken. Well, and because I think there's a trilogy. Then anyway, it's crazy to think how long he's been in that role. I guess
the Bourne Legacy was 2012, and then
we are a news show after all. We should answer this question.
2016, I was right. Movie release.
Okay, you're
dates.
right.
Woo!
Okay, I had no idea about Jason Bourne. I did not know he'd come back again. So I'm sure I did at the time, but it's been too long. Okay, crazy. Never mind. My statement about the long gap is completely wrong. I had no idea he'd done a 4th one. Crazy. Okay. The press tour for Ridley Scott's historical epic Napoleon has seen the 85-year-old filmmaker defending the film against historical history enthusiasts for its apparent controversial inaccuracies.
Jay, that's a kind way of saying it. Ridley Scott just doesn't care. Like, he is on this press tour and he is living his life, and he is so unhinged, like, that he does not, like, if you're going to come at him about historical inaccuracies, he is just going to be like, go away. Like, he's basically, okay, so it all boils down to the pyramid thing. And if you've seen the trailer, you've seen the shot, which is Napoleon ordering his troops to shoot at the pyramids, okay, with a cannon. It's in the trailer, all right? Now, this did not happen in real life, all right? But it's in the movie. And evidently, they asked him, they were like, why did you put that in the movie if you never did that? And he was basically like, I don't know, I've heard that he might have done it, and so I thought
it's a movie.
Because I can.
And then I put it in there. And then, if he didn't do it, whatever. And if he did, whatever. I don't care. Like, he just is, like, on the attack. Like, he's not on the defensive. And so then these people are asking him, like, well, what about this? What about that? And I think his response to, like, somebody asked him, like, what do you say to people who know a lot about Napoleon and they have issues with some of the things that you put in here that they're not historically accurate? And I think his direct quote was, "I would tell them to get a life." So he's just
Burn.
like, whatever.
Oh
if you want to see it,
Sick
see
burn.
it. If you don't, I don't care. I'm Ridley Scott.
Oh, man.
But yeah,
Old
he's
85-year-old
on.
Burn.
Yeah, you get to the point as a filmmaker where you're not on the defensive anymore. You go straight for the throat.
I'm definitely using my rebuttal on this. I
No.
hate that response. I hate that response. The go get a life. Like, no, those people have lives. They're historians. They know a lot about it. Actual historical. You can't use the same James Kirk fired the wrong phaser. Oh, go get a life. No, these are actual historical events. I'm not saying that you can't take liberties. I'm not saying that it's his responsibility to make a movie that is historically accurate, but I do think there's a really interesting ethical question at the center of this, which is most people are. This is not a story. The Napoleon story is not well known to most American audiences. That well known. We know Napoleon did stuff, but I don't think it's very well known at all to modern audiences. I think this will become most people's view because we see something visually and then we go, oh, that's kind of how we're going to picture it from now on. This is going to be a lot of people's image in their minds of what happened. And Haley, get that look off your face. You know I'm right.
It's called Google. You can look shit up on the internet.
Yeah, and who's going to freaking do that? Nobody.
Lots of people do.
Yeah, some people do.
No, not some people. Lots of people.
Not the most people.
Go,
not
Scotty,
most
go.
people.
In terms of the ethical argument here, is it really the burden of the artist to make sure people are properly educated?
No.
No.
Based on a true story or inspired by true events is it's been lampooned at this point because we should know going into these things. This is not, textbook accurate. You have to embellish and dramatize things to make a compelling narrative and story.
Yeah, real history doesn't play well in the movie theaters.
I completely agree with that. But I guess I don't like the attitude. I wish he'd say that. I wish he would have a thoughtful answer of
sure,
yeah,
okay.
there are balances you have to make between okay, this isn't exactly historically accurate, but I think it summarizes to audience that he took Egypt. Which is kind of what is the more thoughtful way of putting what he's saying. He knows that Napoleon took Egypt, so he decided to put a shot of him firing on pyramids. It's a shortcut for audiences. Okay, but it didn't happen. Okay, but it was a shortcut for audiences. But instead he's screw you, historical accuracy doesn't matter. Go away, nerds. I don't know. It's just I don't.
This feels very personal for you.
I just really enjoy this question. I don't know. I like it.
Did you guys know that Rasputin didn't really have a talking bat as a minion? They made that up, you guys. Oh my God.
You're shattering my worldview.
I'm sorry.
Just wait till Gladiator 2 comes out. We'll come back. Which also stars Pedro Pascal, by the way. All right, let's keep it.
Oh yeah, there it is.
And that's why we're here.
We're just here for the Pedro of it all. But again, I don't think it's his responsibility to be historically accurate. I just don't. I think his movies are made in a way that people will assume certain parts of them are historically accurate, and they shouldn't, but they will. And so it's just an interesting question of where's the burden of these things.
I'm a history buff. I've seen Gladiator. I've seen Troy.
How many times a day do you think about Rome?
Every day.
Jay, you said that with such weight on your shoulders.
Every day. Can't believe what we've lost.
Okay, up next, Max has renewed the animated series Harley Quinn for a 5th season.
Scotty, this is surprising because I thought this was already an assured thing. I thought we knew this was already happening. So Harley Quinn continues to be an absolute delight. So keep the show going into perpetuity, or whatever that word is.
Perpetuity.
Perpetuity.
New product from J. Scotty. Perpetuity pickles. In stores now. Sorry. Okay.
It's all good. As soon as I started to say it, I was like, I know this word, but it's not coming out right now.
I love it. Okay, Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio, who starred in separate Karate Kid films decades apart, will unite for a brand new movie set in the martial arts franchise. The new movie from Sony Pictures will premiere in theaters on December 13th, 2024. I find this fascinating. Matt, sorry, I forgot to say my name. I find this fascinating in just the multiverse thing we're here to talk about because it's a franchise that was made and then a different reboot franchise that was made of the same story, and now they're going to somehow combine those worlds. And then you've got the Cobra Kai of it all, which Ralph Macchio's continued on like his character in that story. And so it just feels really cool and kind of like, you know, the kind of stuff we talk about on the show all the time with like, how are they going to introduce X-Men, or how are they going to, it's kind of weird to see them like combining two Karate Kid franchises and in a way like passing down that Pat Morita role, and like they already kind of handed it down to Jackie Chan in the Karate Kid reboot, but now it's like, I'm assuming they'll try to make those characters maybe related in some way. That's or something.
Thought.
Yeah. And then Ralph will go to like see his son or grandson or something, you know, like it sounds like it writes itself, but it seems great. But what are they going to call it? And I really hope Karate Adult. I just really want the sequel to Karate Kid to be called Karate Adult. Or we should make a comedy called Karate Adult. I think that sounds really, really funny.
I like it.
Okay. Well, that's our show for this week, guys. Thanks for joining us on Multiverse News. We will be back soon with lots more. Again, patreon.com/multiverse newscast if you want to support the show. If you enjoy the quality news content you get from here every week. But first, let's go around and tell them where they can find you guys online. Jace, Scotty, St. Clair.
Yes, please check out Animation Deliberation. That's the podcast that takes action, animation, and cartoons seriously, but not too seriously. Invincible Season 2 is currently underway, having a lot of fun covering that series. And then I recently binged the Scott Pilgrim Takes Off anime on Netflix, and I am super pumped to talk about that one because it was incredible. So if any of that interests you, please check out Animation Deliberation wherever you get your podcast.
And Haley Hobbs.
Yeah, you can find me at Source Pages with Brian V. Klein. We read comics and novels as primers for all the geeky TV shows and movies we love, and we're starting something new that we're calling Sacred Jedi Texts, where we just kind of read Star Wars novels that we select and talk about them. And the first one we're going to talk about is Revan, which is a Legends novel, but is being made a Star Wars Essential Legends novel. It was a great book, so we'll be doing that next week.
Awesome. And Jay Sisson.
Yeah, I'm over at Commute the Podcast, where you can come learn a couple interesting things on your way to work in about 15 to 20 minutes. We dropped our Thanksgiving episode this week, where we talk about Christmas creeping up on Thanksgiving, and we talked about why do presidents in the United States pardon turkeys on Thanksgiving. So, just dropping all that Thanksgiving conversation knowledge for you. So come check us out at Commute the Podcast.
Very cool. And you can find me over at Marvel Cinematic Universe Podcast and Star Trek Universe Podcast, where we'll be covering some stuff over the next few weeks. We're getting ready for that What If drop is the big thing on Marvel. Goodness, that's going to be fun. I can't wait. That trailer looks great, and I can't wait to talk about it. So join us next week for Multiverse News. Come back right here to this feed. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the 5 stars. All the things. Thank you. Peace.
You stay classy, Multiverse.